Welcome, and thank you for joining us tonight for one of Lifetime Adoption's webinars. My name is Libby Deniston, and I want to say we have a mixed audience here tonight. All of you are dreaming about adding a child to your lives. Some of you are in different phases, all of you are in different phases of planning adoption. Some of you are joining us tonight and you're just starting to think about whether this is the right path for your family. Others, I recognize, I already see that you're working with us. And then also there's some of you who may be exploring Lifetime specifically for your adoption future. So I just welcome all of you, and I think it's so great to have a mixed audience because we'll really vary up the questions and help you learn as much as possible from our guest speakers tonight. So just really quick, if you have questions tonight, because this is a unique Q&A opportunity to ask fellow adoptive parents the questions on your mind. So, and I'll be able to filter these. So if I'm not sure that our guests could speak to that, then I will either try and point you in the right direction, or you may have to follow up later and say, hey, my question didn't get answered. I'm not sure if got lost or whatever. But you can always reach out to us outside of webinars. Just remember that our main phone number is 1-800-923-6784, and our main website is lifetimeadoption.com. And of course, we have a lot of really great posts and conversations going on in Facebook and Instagram these days, also Twitter. And actually today we found out that we were ranked in among the top 10 of the top 100 adoption blogs, so that was exciting. So if you go to lifetimeadoption.com, you can also find our blog and learn a little bit more about what we post there. So I just want to, again, thank all of you for being here, because you are really what is going to make tonight's Q&A a great resource. So the topics are up to you, and we want to welcome the thoughts. Even if you're not sure how to put it into a question, you are welcome to just type a few thoughts or something that came up recently, and I can try and work that in and see if they can help. So joining us tonight are two adoptive moms that actually, it's kind of ironic, and I didn't plan it this way, but they actually know each other just because their adoption journeys brought them together. More through social media, so it was really fun warming up tonight even, and just hearing them banter back and forth. I kind of made a joke. I said, well, gosh, it's kind of like I'm just, a fly on the wall while I'm with two girlfriends having coffee. So hopefully, we're going to cover a lot of ground tonight, and I know that this hour is going to fly. But joining us are Beth and Heather. And we actually had a third panelist tonight that we were planning on, but she was so sorry she couldn't make it because her help with the kiddos to keep them quiet during the webinar wasn't available anymore. And honestly, I kind of love that story, because that's the reality all of you are looking forward to, is someday I'm going to be so busy with the child I hope to adopt. So that's a reality, and we ended up, I think it'll be really great with the two we have, because what is amazing about Beth's story and Heather's story is that their family dynamics are actually pretty similar. Here, I'll change the slide here and you guys can see a little more specifically who I'm talking about. And they will each talk a little bit about that too, but their family dynamics started out similar, but they have very different adoptions. They're both open adoptions, but they look very different post-adoption. They look very different today from each other, and we'll get to dive into a little bit about that. So Heather and Beth, thank you for being here. Since Heather's photo is on the top, let's just start with a little introduction from you, Heather, and then we'll move to Beth.
Okay, well, it's Heather here. And do I sound okay, Beth? Am I echoey at all?
You sound perfect.
You sound
Okay,
great.
okay, perfect. Well, Jeremy and I got married a little bit later in life, and I had a child from a previous marriage. I've been married and divorced and remarried to Jeremy, and through several years, probably 7 years of trying to get pregnant through fertility methods, we just couldn't. We had Christian, and Jeremy was a great stepfather and still is to him. He is now 20, and in college And we just, we just couldn't get pregnant. And so I started researching adoption, and Lifetime popped up on, I believe it was probably a Google search or something back then. And so I looked into it and researched it for probably about a good, maybe 3 months, 6 months around there. And then I finally filled out their little online application and got contacted or contacted them, I can't really remember. But nonetheless, we made contact, and I just felt like Lifetime was the best fit for us and for what we were going for versus an agency. I wanted a facilitator, and that was like seriously like 6 months to a year of researching the differences between both. And so anyway, we hooked up with Lifetime, and it was just an amazing experience with them. We were with Lifetime for about 10 months before we got our call, and maybe about a month after the call, our official, what do you call that, Libby? Our official, where Chloe, our birth mother, officially picked us. So
I don't know if that has a specific name. It just sort of is the call. It's the call everyone's waiting for.
But ironically, what's crazy, and it's too long of a story, but it's a very cool story. But what I'll just say this part of it, we got 2 calls. We had been waiting. Okay, so we had been trying to get pregnant for several years. Hooked up with Lifetime, contracted with them. Waited for 10 months and got 2 calls in one day. 2 calls in one day. The earlier call, which was at 9 o'clock in the morning, didn't fit any of our, it was just a no. It was just a no, which how do you say no after waiting 7 years, right? I was floored by my husband's answer to say no to that first call. And there were reasons why we said no, some red flags to us. But then later that evening, I was hanging out with my best friend because I had a really bad day because of that. And we were getting pedicures, and my husband calls and says, "Heather, you have to get home now." And I was like, "What's going on?" And he sounded like he was crying, and my husband doesn't cry. And so I told my friend, "Ashley, I've got to go. Something's going on at home." So I left, and seriously, I had like 1 foot done. I left. And because we're getting pedicures. And so I got home, and he looked at me and he said, "We got a call from Lifetime, and it's about a girl, her name is Chloe, and she sent in all her own profile and resume and all these pictures, and just like the perfect scenario." So guys being guys, they don't give details. So I called Lifetime wanting the details, and they laughed at me and they said, "We knew you were going to call." And so I got the details, and we said yes to that, and they connected Chloe and us, and from there it was pretty much history.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And I know that you said you couldn't get into the whole story. Fortunately, Heather and Chloe actually shared their story on a webinar a couple of years ago, so that is still up on adoptionwebinar.com, or if you're already working with Lifetime and you have access to our membership site, you can find their story in there too. And it really is beautiful. And I know I've talked about it in previous webinars since then, but after that webinar, it was even more amazing, the connections just through this one adoption of Heather and Jeremy's that had happened behind the scenes, was that Chloe had researched other places and other families, and that there was actually someone listening to that webinar that night that had heard about Chloe as a possibility, and it had never gone anywhere, and they never knew what happened, but they knew her name and kind of the situation, and they heard Heather's story, and they said, "We always wondered what happened to her," and it just gave us chills because we can tell that that was the perfect match. So I just kind of wanted to add that in there because it really is about finding that right match. And like you said, you had those 2 calls, which is strange. That doesn't happen very much. And the
Honestly, can I say this? Can I just jump in and say this real quick? You say it's so strange, and honestly, this is going to sound way off, way off, I don't even really think you guys called me. I really think it was like a call from God or something. It was weird. So
Mm,
weird, like a test, because there's so much more to that whole first call and story that I know
yeah,
we don't have time to go into, but
right.
I
Like,
just
do
think
you
it's
trust me? Do you trust me with what I have?
exactly, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. It was
yeah.
like God saying, do you trust me? And I want you to basically submit to the authority of your husband, because that was kind of an issue. Anyway,
Mm.
that's a whole nother ball game. But yes, I really don't even think, because Lifetime doesn't call you unless you're a match. And that
Yeah.
first call, we weren't a match. I mean, these kids were like 2 and 3 years old, and we were going for a newborn, and nothing about it matched. But I was ready to say yes because I wanted a family, and my husband said, no, you have to trust me. And I was like, how can you say no? We've been waiting for this call for 10 months, really years, but how can you say no? And God knew I was going to walk into that bathroom and change his mind while he was taking a shower to get ready to go to work. And I said, and God said, no, no. He said no, so it's no. And I was like, no, but I want to change his mind. And he said, no. I mean, it was like, I'm a believer, I'm a Christian, so that's kind of where all this is coming from. But I was like, I want to change his mind. And God just whispered to me and said, no, Heather, no, no.
You know, and
And
that
got the
speaks
second
really
call.
well to the
Yeah.
fact that you do have to be on the same page with your spouse, you know, that one person can't just plow ahead with any adoption plan, whether that's starting to pursue adoption or whether that's with a particular birth mother, that you have to be on a mutual ground, or else it usually leads to a lot of disappointment, confusion, difficulty, and that it is about communication, number one. That's what I always hear from adoptive couples, is communication is number one when it comes to pursuing adoption, because if you're not on the same page with each other, one person's going to be way up here and the other one's going to be basically like this lead anchor just holding them back, and it's going to be difficult. But, you know, I love that you could speak to that, because I do think that, you know, what's going to come out of each of your stories is how meant to be truly each adoption was. And so, Beth, let's hear from you about what led you to adoption, and just sort of introduce yourself to us.
Hi, everyone. So happy to be here. Um, my story is very similar to Heather's in that I got married a little bit older, meaning, in my mid-30s, and was immediately ready to start a family with my husband. I already had a 10-year-old at the time. So, shortly after we got married, we were ready to get pregnant and tried and tried and tried. And and it didn't happen, obviously. I was always very open to adoption. My sister's adopted. I always kind of dreamt one day that I would adopt. But here I was in this position where it's like, okay, are you really going to do it? Or, where do you go from here? So thankfully, my husband and I were on the same page. We actually did not do a lot of fertility treatments. We both were on the same page with that, where we just kind of felt that if it didn't happen for us, that God had a different path for us. And so we went to adoption. And it did take us a couple years. It took us, I think, 3 to 4 years to get to that point, because my husband was on a different page than me. It took him a little bit longer to come around, even though he always said, well, if we can't get pregnant, we'll turn to adoption. When it really came down to it and we didn't get pregnant, and he was like, oh, wow, okay. Did I really feel that way? And yes, he did, but it did take him a bit to get around to, pursuing it. So we found adoption. We actually didn't talk to too many other agencies, but we did talk to different lawyers. And I will say, when I talked to Lifetime, it was night and day difference for us, and we just knew immediately this is who we wanted to partner with. So very quickly, once we decided, we were on board, and we were 100% in, and our wait was 19 months, which, some may say that's nothing, and some may say, wow, it's a lot longer than I would have thought. And for us, it was longer than we anticipated. And it was, the wait is very, very hard, but so worth it. Just as, Libby's saying, and you'll hear from these stories, like when you do finally meet the child that God has for your family, it's a total cliche, but you just see like why it was the timing that it was. And so we got a drop in the lap call. So we didn't get matched like Heather and get to know the birth mother. We were matched after. So we got a phone call basically that the baby had been born and that the mom had, chosen our profile. And so we, within like 2 hours, were in the car driving up to Northern California in Sacramento to go to the hospital and to meet our birth mother and baby. And I was super excited to meet the birth mother. She wanted to meet us too. However, when we got to the hospital, the lifetime coordinator came out and she said that the birth mother had changed her mind on meeting us. She was still 100% on board for us being, the parents to her child, but that she was too emotional and was not ready to meet us personally. So we didn't get to meet her personally, but we did stay the night in the hospital with the baby, and we left with the baby the next day, and here we are. So we're now a family of 4, and yeah. So, and then later, I will say we are technically an open adoption in that, we are totally open to our birth mother being part of our child's life. We have been in touch via email, but it really is in our birth mother's, hands right now, and she's just not ready to be very involved, meaning meet, be involved and meet our, Bryn, and so she's seen pictures, and she really has kind of stayed at arm's distance, and for now, she is younger. For now, that's just where we're at, and we're leaving it to her and hoping that, one day she'll be more involved than she currently is. So that's my story.
Mm-hmm. I love the contrast of that. The really open adoption just starts with you know where your child comes from, and they know what happened to their child. And just so all of you also know, too, that a lot of birth mothers aren't always sure how they're going to feel about open adoption, and just like you heard with Beth's story, sometimes they think, yes, I want that, but then when it comes down to that moment by moment, sometimes it's too hard. There might be a reason that they think, okay, no, now I need space. And that's why we always reassure these women, it's not like it's written in stone. So if you say today, no, I don't want any contact going on, we can reassure them that down the road, if she decides, my life is settled down now, I'm in a different place in my life, and I would like to know how my baby's doing, how this family I helped to create is doing, that the families are open to hearing from her. Same thing goes if it starts out very open and then she needs some space. They're not going to say, well, no, you started out having a lot of contact and we need to hear from you. They're going to respect her comfort level. And as you'll hear tonight too, it's also about, having a healthy, positive relationship. And that's part of what you learn as you're going through that match, even if it's last minute like Beth was describing, even down to moment by moment of, okay, well, we thought it was going to go this way, but, today's a little different day, and you just sort of keep walking forward. So we've had some great questions come in, and I know both of you talked about infertility, and I just wondered if you could each speak to this question that just said, do you have any tips on sort of moving on after infertility? Like, do you remember even emotionally for yourselves, maybe how long it took to sort of wrap your mind around, all right, let's do this next step?
Jeremy and I had been trying to get pregnant for about, maybe a good 5 years. We got married in 2007, and we were married for several years, or a few years, and then we started trying to get pregnant. And it's really hard on the body. For me personally, I just felt like I was done. I was done, and at the end of it all, I just felt like, I just don't want to be pregnant anymore. I still want a baby, but this is just not the way that God has carved it out for us, has planned for us to have a family is through our own biological child. So, for me, one day, it was just, I woke up and I said, I am tired of being poked and prodded and all this medication and, these disappointments and the miscarriages, and I'm done. I'm just done. And that's when we both just decided, let's sit down, let's go back to the board, the drawing board, and let's just see what's next for us. And we decided on adoption, and that's when I started, researching it. And that's, for me, it was just like, there's a little bit of, I felt like a failure. It was me. I was the problem. And, I felt, and my husband doesn't have any children of his own, so I felt like, I can never give him a child, and I just felt like this huge failure. But just with all of his talking to me and just encouraging me and reassuring me that it's okay, I finally got to a point where I was just like, you know what, I guess it really is okay, and I'm okay, and he's okay, and it's okay to move on. And really, I was tired. But there was still a little bit in there that felt like I just couldn't give him a child. But once we got Levi, and once we were, hooked, well, actually, once we just smashed the whole fertility idea and even the idea of being pregnant, it was like a whole new door just opened up. And that's when we got, hooked up with Lifetime, and I got on all these calls, and I was on every webinar, and I was on the online every day. It was just, I was like engulfed in this. It was just like it just took over, and it was such an exciting experience. And just every time the phone rang, and every time I got to talk to Libby or any of the girls out there, I was just so excited to hear from them, and it was just like a whole nother chapter. And in itself. So it was like so exciting for me just to move on and not have to deal with all that junk anymore, all that infertility and all those emotions and all that, And so I don't know, what's crazy is I miss it. Like, I miss getting on the webinars. I miss putting I miss putting like my portfolio or, my little, book together, and I miss getting on lifetimeadoption.com like every single day, and I just miss that. And I told Jeremy, are you ready for another baby? And he looked at me and he said, I don't think so. And I'm like, but I miss it. Like, I'm so excited to be on tonight because it takes me back 4 years ago. It really does, because Levi will be 3 on the 26th of this month, and we were matched 10 months into it, but Chloe was only like maybe 2-3 months along. So we still had a 7-month journey after that even to finally get to hold Levi. So it's 10 plus 7, 8 months.
So waiting, yeah.
Before we met our little boy.
And I want to make sure we get a chance to recap that a little too, because some of you may have seen the photo I popped up a little earlier. I'll put it back up here, but where they actually met during Chloe's pregnancy. They got to meet her,
yeah.
and spend time with her. And so, if you have questions about, well, what was that like, we'd love to see you type some of those in. But Beth, let's hear from you, because I know that you decided not to pursue treatments. But was there sort of a milestone or some kind of marker in your memory where you just felt like, you know what, it's just time, it's time to let that go and see what's next, and tips you might give to someone else who's thinking, how do I know if it's time to, change paths?
Yeah, so, mine is similar emotions. It sounds like Heather hung on a lot longer than I did, meaning she endured a lot through that 7 years of trying to get pregnant. And again, I did it for just over 3 years, and it was the roller coaster of emotions every single month of, am I going to get pregnant? Oh my gosh, wow, I'm late. I'm a couple days late. Maybe I'm pregnant. And then, no, you're not pregnant. And just the constant emotional roller coaster just really became too much for me on a monthly basis, because ours was unexplained infertility, and I had, women can relate to this, with the infertility process. For men, it's very simple. They can test their, whatever you want to call it. Okay, fine. You can test their sperm and see,
We're all
what's
grown-ups
wrong
here. We know.
It's not very invasive for them, and it's not very involved. Whereas for women, for me at least, it became very invasive, all the different tests that they had to run. And, we did try Clomid. I will say we did try Clomid. And so going in and, seeing how many follicles produced, and it just became so clinical for me. And again, I know some of you are listening going, gosh, you didn't go through anything. And you're right, I didn't go through a lot of what, Heather and others have gone through. But for me, it just was too much for me emotionally. And I think my husband, again, I was waiting for my husband to come around to adoption. And I think he finally just saw all the emotional toll it was taking on me. And so then he opened his heart and his mind to adoption. And similar to Heather, when we chose adoption, it was like a breath of fresh air. It was a brand new beginning, and it wasn't like I wasn't dealing with the if I'm going to get pregnant. It became like when. It's like, okay, so it's no longer if I'm going to have another child. It's when. When is God going to bring this child? Because, he had led us to adoption, and ultimately God was going to bring a child to us. And so that was exciting, and not having to deal with the emotional turmoil of every single month and if I'm going to get pregnant. And similar to Heather, I felt the same way. I felt like a failure because I wanted so much to give, my husband a biological child, and he so much wanted to see his wife pregnant with his child, and it broke my heart that I would never, be able to fulfill that dream of his. He had dreams of seeing his wife pregnant with his baby, and for whatever reason, that just wasn't the path for us. And so that was hard to deal with, but I will say that, again, once we were into adoption, it was exciting, super exciting, and then the wait got to be very, very hard. But then, Bryn comes along a year and a half later, and I can tell you, the day we were leaving the hospital and just looking over at my husband and just the pure joy that was in his his whole being was just so illuminated. He was just so full of joy driving his daughter home from the hospital. And that's when I was able to just really let go of all the feelings of failure, of not being able to fulfill a dream, because God had stepped in and he fulfilled the dream for Chris. So no, it wasn't his biological child, but it didn't matter at that point. Bryn was our child that God had chosen for us, and so all of that finally just went away. So similar emotions, but, just a little bit different on the journey. So.
Yeah. Well, we're getting a lot of feedback from both of you sharing just how, we know that those feelings don't just go away because you start an adoption path. A lot of times you're still coping with those. And Beth, I love that you just summed it up with, it was actually driving home that I finally saw how, okay, yes, this was the way it was supposed to go. And for many of you, you may not have, there may be that last layer of healing that comes once you're actually home with your baby and you get perspective on that hindsight. But moving forward, and we've had a lot of questions coming in about how did you handle the wait, because like Heather was saying too, that even though they were chosen after 10 months, she was still early in her pregnancy, so they had to wait out the pregnancy until Levi was born. And so I would love for you both to reflect on and talk about, maybe in hindsight, Beth, you and I had a great conversation the other day about how if you were to do this again, you would hope you would take your own advice about the waiting. So let's continue with you and talk about what would you tell another adoptive parent who's thinking, gosh, yeah, I'm right there with you, Beth. We're going on 2 years, or it's been longer than a year, and I'm starting to wonder, when is this going to happen? Am I still on the right path? What would you tell people that you either wish you did or that you did that really helped while you were waiting?
Yeah, so the wait, it's so hard. I too, like Heather, I was on every single webinar. It was like my lifeline, just to hear other successful stories and just hearing other people talk about their feelings. Meaning, you know, when you're doing the when you can't get pregnant and the journey to get pregnant and not get pregnant and how all the emotions that are involved, people don't really get that unless they've been through it. So it was so refreshing for me on every webinar to just be on a call with another woman or, you know, a couple of dads, but just hearing their stories and relating so much. And it was just so refreshing to have someone that understood my path, because it is such a lonely path. The path of infertility is very lonely. It's very hard. So webinars were my lifeline. I would do that all over again if I were to do this again, definitely. One of the things I wouldn't have done, and I wish that I spent a lot of time on the Lifetime website looking at all the waiting families, and I mean, I literally probably went on there almost every single day. I think I knew every family that was trying to adopt, and, you know, seeing who was getting matched and who, you know, had adopted. And I just spent so much time, and you know, a lot of emotions came from that. You know, Libby would listen to me. I'm like, why doesn't anyone want us? And just the rejection I would feel, because I would see a new family come on, and before I know it, they were matched. And I'm like, well, I don't understand, God. Like, why doesn't anyone want me? And so that was my biggest thing. I really wish I hadn't spent the time on Lifetime's website. And I'm only sharing that because even if just one of you relate to that, then I want to share that, because that really was something that it really caused a lot of emotional strife for me, to be perfectly honest. So looking back now, again, now that I have Bryn and the path that brought us to her and just seeing how God worked, I would hope the next time around that I would truly be better at trusting His timing, and truly just trusting that it's not going to be in my timing. You know, a year and a half, again, some of you that sounds like, oh my gosh, really, I've only been doing this for a month. You're telling me I could be waiting another year and a half. Other of you are going, a year and a half? What I wouldn't give to have just a year and a half. We've been waiting for 2.5 years, or whatever the case may be. And I just wish that I had trusted God because everyone said, I kept hearing on the webinars, when you get your child and God matches you, you're like, oh my gosh, this is why it took, you know, this is why we went through all we went through. So I know that all sounds so cliche, and I always wanted to take that advice into practice. So I would hope, if we were to do this again, that I would heed to my advice and truly trust God. I will say I did start to really focus on me. You know, I started like working out and just trying to, like, you know, I started reading again and just trying to find, you know, new hobbies, because so much of my time prior was obsessed with trying to get pregnant. And so that was something that I wish I had done sooner too. I wish I had started doing something for me sooner to help occupy the time. So.
Interesting way of saying that. I wish I would have done something for me sooner to occupy the time. Because we did have a question come in that was a little more practical that just said, so how do you let go and let God? And I think that that is kind of a personal and self-reflective journey that you may need to take to find that out, because this will not be the only time in your life that you need to practice that kind of trust and faith.
Oh, true.
But Heather, how about you? When you reflect on that, even I would say I hear from a lot of adoptive parents, they struggle to wait for the call. You know, you've got a birth mother that's followed through on everything. She wants to talk to you, and then you accept the match. And then a lot of them get just as anxious and ready to plow ahead during the pregnancy. Like, when is the due date coming, and when can we get home with our baby? And so how did you handle that waiting time?
Well, a lot like Beth, I spent every single day, but like often hours a day, online, on the website, on Lifetime's website, But for me, what I would do was, and this is probably part of what I wish I probably wouldn't have done. But what I would do is I'd go into their section on Lifetime's website, and I would go into the birth mothers. Like, there's birth mothers there that, that have, and I would say to myself, I wonder if we're a match. I wonder if I'm going to get a call from that birth mom. And so
did that too.
Yeah. And so, but actually, unlike Beth, I actually got hope when I would see, because like Beth, I knew every single adopted family waiting to adopt, especially in my region, and it would give me hope when they would get matched, and I would cheer them on like they didn't even know that I'd be praying for them, or I'd get so excited for them, and I'd be like, yay, they finally got matched, I'm so excited for them. And so that happened often for me. So to see them get matched gave me hope, because I knew it kind of just solidified that it's possible. Because, through the journey, you do wonder, is it really going to happen? Is it really going to happen for me? And so that gave me hope. Now, so that was like that first 10 months. And then when we got the call and we got matched with Chloe, she was very early on, and she kind of just insisted that we match, because with Lifetime, I think they like for the birth mother to be at least so far along, like maybe 20 weeks or something. I don't really know the number, but she was pretty insistent in wanting to match like earlier. So she was less than 3 months pregnant. She may have only just been like maybe 2 months or something pregnant. But now that wait, I had to do what Beth did, find something to like take up some time. I mean, we're business owners, so I was busy anyway, but I had to do like something that I enjoyed. So I took up baking. I took up cake decorating, and it kind of would, I don't know, it would allow me just kind of escape into that. And then we made a lot of trips to California, which is where Chloe was from, to spend time with her and go to all of her doctor's appointments. We went to most of all her sonograms. And then we had her come to Texas and stay with us for the summer. She actually stayed with us for like, I want to say about a month. She stayed in our home while she was pregnant. And so during all that time, I would really just talk to her and ask her, it's your choice. I mean, we want this, but at the end of the day, I really did just have to be okay with, if she really wanted to keep Levi, that was okay too. It was going to be devastating to us, and in some respect, but at the same time, I just really had to come to just a realization that that was a real thing. And she would always assure me, no, I don't want to parent, I can't parent, and I would just tell her, okay, well, we're still here, and we love you, and we're here for you, and anything you might need, let us know. And but I also always assured her that if she really did change her mind, that we would still love her, that we would still want to be part of her life. And she was real thankful for that. Like, it gave her, I don't know, I think it gave her more peace about her decision, because we told her, we're not just adopting the baby, but we're sort of kind of adopting you too, and we've already adopted you into our hearts. So even if you change your mind, we still want to be part of your life, and help you even with the baby. And I even tell her now, if you ever have children in your future and you need a grandma for him or her, I'm here, whatever, we'll babysit, we'll take vacations together or whatever, and she's just like, oh, I'm so excited about that, and she's about to apply for medical school, but she's a biology major or some kind of crazy degree in Texas. She came to Texas to go to college to be closer to us even. But and she's not like a bugaboo birth mother at all. Matter of fact, we don't even hear from her at all, except for Thanksgiving and his birthday, which are only a couple of days apart, and then maybe one time during the summer. She might want to, you know, come up, and like over the last 3 years, we've spent every Thanksgiving and birthday together since the day he was born. So we spent that first Thanksgiving, and then the second Thanksgiving, and then this will be our third Thanksgiving together. And Levi's birthday just happens to be the 26th of November, so it's always right around Thanksgiving. But other than that, like, we don't hear from her. Like, every once in a while she'll text, and, you know, or she'll Facebook, you know, or she'll like our pictures on Facebook. Birth father doesn't have anything to do with him, but his parents keep up with Levi on Facebook, so that's kind of nice.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know,
and I love that.
Honestly,
I love that because we
yeah.
did have a question, Heather, that came in that said, so when you have visits with her, do you go to her? Does she come to you? And my answer behind the scenes was what you're describing, which is that at the time she gave birth, she lived in another state, but she graduated school and then decided to choose a college. But it's still a few hours away from you, so it's not even like she's some weird, like, you know, like,
yeah, no, she's
Saturday
like
morning
hours.
movie where she's stalking you and moving in the same town or something. I mean, she made her own. She has her own goals, and it doesn't surprise me that as a young 20-something and with a full load of college, that she probably isn't in touch as much as she probably even was even a couple of years ago.
Exactly.
But that you still are open to that, and it really is more a flexible thing. But like you might hear in other adoption stories where it's more, this is how it goes, this is how it always happens, and that's what I love about open adoption, is how much you can personalize it and customize it. And I brought up this photo here where you were in the hospital together, and then of course one of your visits here with little Levi, and I still love that he has his little thick legs.
No, I know, he's a chunky monk.
And you know, would you say that this relationship and the way that it's gone surprised you? You know, when you look back into, we said yes to adoption, and we are open to an open adoption, and then the way that this has come about and just felt so familiar to you, did that ever surprise either you or Jeremy that it's gone like this?
You know, yes and no. Yes, because, you know, when we were thinking about adoption and open adoption and stuff, you know, I really never gave it just a lot of thought other than letters and pictures. You know, I always thought open adoption is letters and pictures. But taking my personality into consideration, I am such a people person that it almost probably just, I don't know, it just probably wouldn't have worked out. I mean, I was just so involved with her, maybe even more than she wanted me to be, but I was so concerned about her. I mean, I would send her little gift packs of even just like snacks, you know, or I sent her some teaks. They're little kind of ballerina shoes that are real comfortable, just to make her more comfortable on her feet. And you know, I would text message her, and when we were in town, I mean, we would just talk a ton and just spend a ton of time together, and we just really got to know each other. So yes and no. I mean, it surprised me, but it kind of doesn't surprise me. And I think it surprised her more than it even did us. It was like, gosh, I didn't think that I would fall in love with the birth family that took my baby. I mean, or that I even chose. She said, I just love you guys so much. Like, I couldn't even imagine my life without y'all. And we're still part of her, you know. We don't have to do this, but, you know, we help her with school books for college. And that was decided after everything was finalized, and, you know, because she was still a senior in high school. And we told her, you know, my husband and I prayed about it, and we said, you know, if you need some, because she was having a really hard time getting to college financially, and she's so smart. And we thought, man, how sad would that be for her not to live out her dreams because of money, you know? I mean, and so she got scholarships, and she got tons of, you know, scholarships and to go and loans and stuff. And so we still help her with school books. So we buy her books every semester for school just to help her out.
Beyond, yeah.
Yeah. And we didn't, you know, and I mean, that was, she didn't even know we were going to do that. We didn't even know we were going to do that. That was just something we decided to do like a whole year after we even had Levi. You know, it was just like, you know what, we want to help you. And so she's real appreciative of that. She doesn't expect it. She even like kind of feels bad accepting the money. She's like, no, you know, y'all do too much for me. But I just feel like she did so much for us. She made she gave us a family. I mean, she made us our, you know, our family whole. And like I said, she's part of it. And I don't know. I don't know any other way. You know, and if we decide to do it again, I don't know if it'll be the same. I don't know.
Right. And we had a great comment come in from another adoptive mom in the audience that just says, I want to add to this conversation about open adoption that you don't know how you're going to feel about it beforehand, but even if you're uncertain, your heart expands to love your child's birth mom. And I would say that is a sentiment that I hear among all adoption stories. Even Beth, I know just in communicating with you since you adopted Bryn, that the love you have for her birth mother, even though you are not in touch and there's not an opportunity to create this sort of loving, we give affection to you kind of relationship, that you still feel that in your heart. And I would love if you could just add to that sentiment about, you know, what it means to you just to have had the opportunity just to know who she is, and how you honor her space, but at the same time, you know, still have that feeling that comes from this.
Yeah, and I relate so much to what Heather's saying. I mean, we have a completely different situation than they do, but just her feeling towards Chloe and how they want to do this and this for her, and that's exactly how I feel towards our birth mother. And I have to say, I think Chris, my husband, was so super surprised at the heart he naturally had for the birth mother, and so that's been really fun to see, and I'm grateful because Chris and I are on the same page again about our feelings about our birth mother. Because I have to say, you know, even family members, you know, they're always like, an open adoption, do you really want that? And, you know, everyone has their opinions, and no one really understands our heart for our birth mother like the two of us do. So I'm just so grateful that we are on the same page with that. And Chris definitely was surprised at the love that naturally came for the birth mother. I mean, obviously she made our dreams come true. She's our hero. And, you know, it's just been amazing in that way. And I do, you know, we haven't communicated now for, it's probably been a couple of years actually since we've communicated, but there was a time where we were communicating pretty frequently. And that's the thing, like my heart, it was like she is younger, and ironically her mother is even younger than me, which is just marveling.
Wow.
So I just naturally had a heart for her, and I just wanted to take care of her. And I actually really had to check myself on that, because I did want to just step in and take care of her. And again, every situation is different. In our particular situation, we were advised, you know, don't get involved financially with her. And we were advised by, like, not just by Lifetime, but also by, like, the adoption coordinator on our home study side, who was very involved with the birth mother and the relinquish of rights and so forth. So it was really hard. That was really hard for me, because I did want to just take care of her and, you know, embrace her as another daughter, and because that's just what my heart had for her. My heart just genuinely just loved her, and I was amazed. Again, I knew I would care for her. I just don't think I had any idea, nor did my husband, that we would just so naturally like truly love and care about her. So it's really, really beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Sorry, I had like a little frog in my throat. I wanted to add while I have these photos up, Beth, of your son and your daughter together, because we had some great questions come in about, like, questions from family. So while I clear my throat, if you could just speak to a couple of questions that came in about not only questions from your family, like how's it going, or like you guys both brought up what it's like to have them question your open adoption, but also you each have children.
Yeah.
And so I know that there are people joining us tonight who already are parents, and that they wonder too, how can I help include my child but also still protect them, because we don't know what's around the corner, and we don't want them so far down the road, you know, that we want to still celebrate our family where we're at today. So maybe talk a little bit about just even the relationship that we can see through these photos of your children together, and kind of how that's come about.
You know, and that actually goes back to, too, when you were asking how did you know it was time to move on to adoption. And actually my son played a part in that as well, because my son was an only child, obviously, for the first 10 years of his life until I met my husband. And my son wanted a sibling. He wanted a sibling so desperately. And he was constantly asking me, Mommy, did you meet a husband today? No, Desmond, I didn't. And he says, oh, I'm just going to keep praying, Mom. And that was heartbreaking, right? So obviously, you know, then I met my husband, wonderful, and then we couldn't get pregnant. So it did come to a point where my son, I remember we were actually at Disneyland, in line at Disneyland, and my son looks at me and my husband, and he was angry, and he said, why haven't you gotten me a sibling yet? And, you know, we looked at him, and it broke my heart. And I said, Desmond, we're trying, you know, and that was when I was like, it's time, like, for me to look into other options. So that was a trigger for me to just say, you know what, we've tried this route, it's not working, let's try this other route. And so my husband, you know, my son really played a role. So they are like 15 years apart, which is extraordinary. It is like starting all over again, and Heather relates all too well. But they have the most special bond. And even when we got that phone call, and it was the drop in the lap situation, and, you know, Desmond was ready to jump in the car, and that's the thing. They, you know, they are 15 years apart, but Desmond's wanted this as much as we wanted it. So she was a dream come true for Desmond too. And I know so many siblings, I mean, I'm sure parents are dealing with that with their siblings. Like they, you know, they want a sibling, and it's hard. It's really, really hard. But again, my son would say the same thing. He wouldn't have wanted it any other way. Now that he has Bryn as his sister, he would have waited 10 times over again and again for this outcome. So that's where the whole timing, you're just really trusting the timing, and you just know, like, God chose this girl for our family and to be Desmond's sister, and Desmond wouldn't trade it for anything, even though those 15 years of wanting a sibling were really hard for him. So
that's exactly how it went down for us. You know, Christian was 8 when Jeremy and I got married, and at first he wasn't really sure about a sibling. Like, he wanted one, but he was, you know, didn't know if that would take his mama away from him. But when we got matched with Chloe, I mean, he was so excited. And now, and they're 17 years apart, so we totally started over. Him and Chloe are actually the exact same age. They're only a month apart. Christian is my son, and Chloe, you know, the birth mom, are only a month apart. And now he won't even come visit unless Levi is home. He's in college. And so he'll call first and say, hey, Mom, is Levi home? Yeah. Okay, I'll be right there in just a minute. He goes to college here in our town and here at the university. And or he'll call and say, Mom, is Levi home? No, he's out with Jeremy somewhere or whatever. Okay, well, I'll probably just, stop by sometime tomorrow. So, and he eats him up. I mean, he is so in love with Levi. It's unbelievable. And Levi is so in love with him. They have the best little relationship ever. I mean, they really do. He just loves his little brother, and Levi just loves Christian to death. They talk to each other on the phone. Levi will call him, almost every day, or Christian will call Levi almost every day, and they'll have, their little conversations and stuff. So love each other.
Mm-hmm. Hi, ladies. This is Kim King. I am the backup for Libby.
She's there clearing her throat still, and I apologize for that. And she's getting herself together, but she asked that I chime in. And for the listeners, you may know me. I'm one of the adoptive family coordinators. Ladies, I'm just so blessed hearing all of your insight and just how everyone's relating, and I feel like it should be so validating for so many listeners. I can tell that it's validating for the two of you as well as you share. I felt the same way. There was a question, and this might be a little more for Heather, about during the match process. What is the best advice for the first meeting with the birth mother? What all did you talk about?
So after Chloe and I got matched, or Chloe and us, we didn't speak on the phone or in person for probably a month. Like, seriously. We did tons and tons of emails, and then emails turned into text messages, and then she finally got the courage up to call. And I mean, mind you, this little girl, I mean, she's bright, she's smart, she's outgoing. So for her, like, to be nervous about that knowing her now is kind of weird, but honestly, the first few emails were just getting to know each other. How are you feeling? What do you do? What are your, extracurriculars? What do you want to study in school? I mean, just really more about her than about the baby. So that first 30, and even throughout the pregnancy, to be really honest, we really didn't talk about the baby that much. I mean, it was just a given. It was a known. That's what brought us together. That's why we were together. That's why we were all waiting for the birth. I mean, that was just kind of known. So that wasn't even talked about. I mean, the only time we ever really brought up the baby was when we were there for, like, the actual sonograms or, like, the doctor's appointments. Then it was obvious we were going to talk about the baby, But after that, we would go run and get lunch, or run and, go watch a movie, or she would come over. We rent a little cottage there in Dana Point, California, and she'd come over, and we would just hang out and drink coffee or whatever. And it was all about her, not anything about the baby, really, to be honest. So, I guess my advice is, when you get your match, just talk about her and what she does and what her likes are and dislikes, and what she's doing, and, if she's not college age, if she's older, younger, whatever, just kind of what she does, and, what job she holds, or whatever, whatever stage she's in. I would really just say, get to know her and be genuine about it, and really want to know about her, because, I mean, it's her baby, and up to the time that baby's born, and even in some states several, 72 hours later, she can change her mind. And I think the main thing is just making her feel okay about that. And just not making her feel like, I'm only interested in you because of your baby.
Right. Well, and I think it helps that you're able to connect with her on more of that social level, as just two people who are coming together, and you're genuinely interested in her. A lot of the hard questions that you might think you would have wanted to ask have already been asked by Lifetime. She's already filled out all her medical information. We've already gone through a complete intake with her and asked about all the goings-on and origins, how she came here, what she's thinking about for her future as far as is parenting one of those options. So that really frees you up emotionally to just be able to connect with her because all of the logistical questions have been answered. What about, did she ask you guys questions? What did she want to know?
Yeah, so like she wanted to know really basic stuff, like she wanted to know where we lived, obviously, you know, she wanted to know what we did for a living. She wanted to know our background in terms of like, you know, being a Christian, our spiritual background. She wanted to know more about Christian and our relationship with him, and then you know, once we got to know each other, I mean, then it got what, you know, like more personable or more personal, like, well, you know, how long have you guys been together, and does Jeremy have any other children? Has he ever been married? You know, just kind of getting to know each other back and forth. There wasn't anything just like real aha or just real big. It was just how you would get to know a friend. Just questions like you would get to know a friend. You know, hey, you have children? No, what do you do for a living? And, you know, just, it was just so fluid. I don't know. It just kind of happened naturally. It was just natural conversation. It wasn't ever forced. And then she'd ask about our day. You know, it wasn't just about who are you, but like, how are you? And yeah, so it was nice. But those first few emails, they were long. I mean, they were long emails. And it was just, this is who we are. This is who we are. And then it got to where it was, how are you? With, you know, the text messages is, hey, you know, or she's got a, this is going to sound funny, but she's got a big old booty. So I'd say, hey, booty dishes. You know, I'd say, hey, booty dishes. Yeah, she would say, hi, hot mama. You know, and so we kind of got to where we would be playful, you know, and then she'd send me little videos of like Levi moving in her stomach and say, you know,
That's
this is
cool.
what, you know, yeah, this is what we're doing today. And, you know, she would send a video, or she would, you know, she'd text me and say, give me her drama with friends at school, you know, and I would talk her through that. Or like the birth father, you know, oh, me and Ian are fighting or whatever, you know, and I don't know what to do. What do you think I should do? And then like I kind of started getting to be like her little, her adult friend that's been there, done that, and coach her through what not to do, you know. And so we became friends, and so I was like almost like a really, like a second mom to her, or like a really cool big sister.
Right.
And that's kind of how it played out. And so the first few, I guess, is just more of her questions were just, who are you? And then it got to just like, hey, this is what's going on, you know, and how are you?
And Beth, I know that your call came suddenly and you guys rushed to the hospital. I actually remember all the goings on during the first business days after that. It's like it was just yesterday. But you know, when the birth mom was looking for a family, even though she was already in the hospital, do you recall any requests that she had, things that she wanted to know, or what she was looking for to make sure she got the right family for her baby?
So the big thing the only things I really remember is that I come from a really large family and a very close family, and she had seen pictures on the profile of our family, and it reminded her of her family, and that was what she wanted for her child. You know, we had a different situation too, in that, you know, when we got the call from Lifetime, it was like, okay, she's 100% certain, like she knows, like this is what she wants to do. She was, you know, Bryn came early, so she had already been thinking about adoption, but she hadn't done anything about it, and she thought she had more time, and then Bryn was, you know, came about 5 weeks early. So, you know, we kept being reassured that she was 100% sure, and you guys are absolutely the parents that she wants. The hard thing was that she hadn't told her her family that she was pregnant. So she was living on her own and hadn't told her mom that she was pregnant. And so when Heather was talking about how some states, you know, everyone has different laws, but California actually has 30 days. They have 30 days to relinquish their rights. And we kept making appointments to relinquish her rights and canceling the appointments. And that was really hard because then she actually let her mom know that she had had the baby and that the mom wanted the baby. So we went from being like in 100% certainty, like this is 100% what I want, to getting the call 3 days later saying, you know, getting the call from Lifetime saying, well, the grandmother wants, you know, the baby. Thankfully, the birth mom was of age. She was 19 years old, so she was over 18, so it was her decision to make. But she says, you know, she's going to take the next 24 hours to think about this, and she will let you know in 24 hours if she's going to, you know, take the baby back and, you know, have her mom raise it, or if the baby's going to stay with you. So I can't even tell you how devastating like that 24 hours, how trying it was. And that's the thing I wanted to say about Lifetime. Lifetime was amazing during that time. It was such a challenging time. I think Lifetime was a lot of support in the waiting process, but I have to say it was 10 times over after the baby was born and all that Lifetime, because of our current, you know, of our situation. Lifetime was amazing. And Chris and I just kept saying, thank God we came to Lifetime, because being in the situation that we were and then just the way that Lifetime worked with us after was amazing. So I just wanted to say that, because I know in the midst of the wait it gets so hard and you go, gosh, you know, should we have gone somewhere else, or whatever the case may be. I'm just telling you, I only say that because I know I had my own feelings, and I can't tell you how much God affirmed that Lifetime was the right place, as he did in those very trying days following, you know, bringing Bryn home. So ultimately we did get a call 24 hours later, and she had said that she says, you need to tell that, and she said our names. She said, I need you to tell Chris and Beth that I want her to stay with them, and they are going to be her parents. And so we were just, I mean, I can't even tell you how amazing that was to get that phone call. But I will say it did still take her another 26 days to finally sign the paper. So we were just constantly on pins and needles, but Lifetime was amazing during that time. So totally different than, you know, Heather's situation.
Yes, and I think that for the birth grandmother, it was a shock to her because, like you said, she didn't even know her daughter was pregnant. And then I believe she got a picture after the baby was born, and that was the announcement of, I was pregnant and I chose adoption, right?
And and she was actually, the grandmother was supportive at first of, like, when she told her mom, like, I've had this baby, here's a picture, but I've, you know, chosen adoption. And her mom was actually supportive of that. But then I guess the mom took the picture of the baby and put it on Facebook and announced it to the extended family. And the extended family was like, what are you doing? Like, you cannot let her do this. And so that's when she stepped into, you know, Mama Bear came out. And so but ultimately it was up to the birth mother. And, you know, thankfully she had chosen, you know, she wanted a mom and a dad for her child. And that was
right.
Thankfully,
And by
she felt drawn to us in some way, shape, or form.
Yes. I think I remember the coordinator who worked with you just saying how the birth mom said, no, this family is already a family. I'm not going to take her away from them.
Yes. Yeah. It was Christine. So,
yeah. Well, I appreciate you ladies so much. I know that Libby is still here. I'm not sure. You're welcome back, Libby. If you each have a minute, maybe to just share a last bit of wisdom, but there were several questions coming in, you know, and I don't want to keep everyone too late because you do have your own babies to get back to, but there were several questions, and I know this is actually a time of year that creates a lot of anxiety for people who are waiting to adopt or people who are thinking about starting an adoption You're going to get together with friends and family, and those well-meaning family members will say things like, oh, I just can't wait for another grandbaby, or when are you going to get me a grandbaby, or what's going on? Have you guys decided to adopt? Or, yeah, has it happened? Is anything going on? Or they're bringing their own opinions and tips, like, my friend did it this way. Have you tried that? And so I would love maybe if you each could just give sort of a little nutshell advice about how you handle the people that you don't really want to get into it with, or just kind of keep yourself grounded and focused on the positive things that are happening, even though people around you may be casting some doubting questions.
Yeah, holidays are hard. That's a hard question. I will say, you know, you really have to find it in yourself, right, to find that trust or faith in the process if you feel like, you know, you've been led to adoption, and just really trusting the timing of it. And that's where I was constantly saying, you know, in God's time. And again, sometimes I said that and I didn't, you know, I wasn't always feeling great about saying that, but I really was trying to convince myself too. I really did waste too much time pining over what I didn't have, instead of really enjoying the blessings I did have in front of me, even just my husband. And there's just so many people out there that would love to have a wonderful husband, and just so many things we take for granted. So my advice is just keep the faith, trust, lifetime. You know, I would say more than anything, I would love for you to find another person going through what you're going through, because finding someone that truly gets it, you know, is amazing. Like, it's a wonderful thing when, and then again, like I had my husband, he totally got it, but it was nice to finally connect with other adoptive, you know, prospective adoptive parents. And even if you just can connect with one person that just gets what you're feeling, and you can feel what you feel and they truly understand, is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Heather, how about you?
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, and this sounds crazy, but you just have to own it. You have to own your decision.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to get a lot of people, and we were fortunate to go to a church who really, you know, embraces adoption, and a lot of other families have adopted in our church and stuff. And through that time, whether it was a fortunate thing or an unfortunate thing, we didn't live in the same town as our family, so kind of out of sight, out of mind. But so we didn't have to answer a lot of those questions, but like during the holidays and things like that, you know, for us, people were pretty sensitive to it, because we kind of made them, we just kind of said it straight at the beginning. This is what we're doing, you know, kind of in the tone of whether you like it or not. And it's in God's hands, it's in His time, and whether it happens or not. And we'll keep in touch with everybody, and, you know, let everybody know, or if you have any questions, feel free to ask, but this is what we're doing. And I would just say to own the decision, and to just be confident in it, and just kindly, you know, tell people, I don't want to talk about it, or, you know, it's in God's hands. That's where we're putting it, and that's where we're keeping it. Because it is tough, you know, it is tough to answer those questions. I mean, we had a lot of questions from even some strangers that would ask, well, how are you going to love this baby if it's not yours?
Mm-hmm.
And I would just say stuff, I mean, it would throw me back, but, you know, people really do have those questions, and I would just answer, well, I don't know. I know that it's what's right for us. It's not for everybody, but it's for us. And they would just look at me and say, wow, well, I don't know how you're going to do it. And I said, well, you know, I don't either, but we'll figure it out. And it's right, because we just know it is. You know, we know it's right in our hearts. My husband and I are on the same page, and we've owned the decision, and we're doing it. And so people respect that, you know, and sometimes even when you have to be kind of stern about it, people respect it eventually. And now it's like, no one can get enough of him. They're like, oh my gosh, what would life be without him? And they'll come around, especially the family members that are like, well, because some of the family members in our family too are, why would you want to adopt? That's not yours. And I mean, we're a Hispanic family, so I got a lot of that on that side, and not so much on my husband's side, but definitely on my side. So it's kind of a culture thing.
Yeah, I love that you said that, own it, to just own it. And I think that that's probably wise advice for any parents, because you're going to get all kinds of opinions on why are you doing that formula, or you're bottle feeding, or you use those kinds of diapers. And to really just kind of own your choices. But, looking back, it's pretty rare that I would hear people say once we had that child at home, that those people were still skeptical. They usually are big mush balls of, oh my gosh, you're here, give me that baby. And
exactly.
But I think it would be family to family, just like you said. Jeremy's family was different from yours. Beth, I would imagine in your household that you probably even had some people that were wondering why you were pursuing this path, and other people that were totally on board because it was already part of your immediate family.
Yeah.
And that it is, I would say, sometimes that response, what do you say to family members? Well, I think it depends on the family member and what they're feeding you and what they're trying to say. But I love that, just owning it. And Beth, I wrote down what you said. I spent so much time focused on what I didn't have. And I would say the two of you have really brought an amazing balance tonight of, moving forward, but still bringing comfort to the present. And we really appreciate your time to share. Is there anything you want to add before we close out tonight? I know we've already gone over so long, but is there anything you want to add before we close?
I would just say to trust your decision, trust in the Lord, and really trust in lifetime. Really put some faith where you put your time and money, and really, again, just own all those decisions and choices for you and your husbands or wives, whoever's on the call, and just really trust in God for all this, and really use Lifetime's resources. And I would use them 1,000 times over, and very pleased with all of their service, and the people that work there are amazing. Levi's 3 years old. We were waiting for 10 months and then another 7 months, and we're still in contact. So just a really, really neat company. Very, very blessed to have ran into them.
100% agree. She said it best.
Thank you both. And I love getting these webinars together, because then we usually get to scoop up baby pictures that we haven't seen in a while because you've been so busy raising them. And it's just, when I look at these photos, I couldn't imagine these kids and then the other families, and knowing even more details behind the scenes of how you came together. And it's just amazing to be on the side of stories like this, where we can just even get a little peek at what God was seeing when He just whispered in your ear, come this way towards adoption. We just appreciate so much your time. Well, apparently Levi's up.
Yeah, Levi just got home. Hi, sweetheart.
And so
This is after the show now.
Yeah, for all of you listening, we want to thank you for your time and for your questions for our guests this evening. And Kim especially, thank you for answering questions behind the scenes and then taking over while I somehow lost my voice. But if any of you have questions or feedback after tonight's webinar, we would love to hear from you. You can always write to your coordinator, or if you're not sure who that is, or if she's the right person to get feedback or questions about tonight's webinar, you can always just send them to me. A lot of you already have my email address, but just in case, it's libby@lifetimeadoption.com. And then, of course, if you are on the side of things well, no matter what side or phase you're in considering or working with Lifetime, if you have a question that's specifically related to your adoption progress, please reach out to your coordinator because she would love to help you get the right answer, get the right direction, or have an update from you so that we can better help you towards that adoption story that you're already creating. So thank you again to Beth and Heather for being here. I'm somehow imagining we might have to do this again because everybody was just eating you up. So we just really appreciate all of your wisdom and just your tender spoken words tonight. Thank you. And we
Libby,
will,
Libby, can I say something real quick to the listeners? This is.
Did you go away? Are you still there?
Any listeners may have, and you know, they can reach out to me via Facebook or whatever, or somehow, you know, get my information from you guys, my phone number, my email. So if you guys have any other questions,
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, because Beth and I have reached out to each other on Facebook.
Because I just know how much it means to have someone that really and truly knows what you're going through. So feel free to ask Libby for contact information. I'm totally here. So
yes, likewise.
Absolutely, and we love hearing that.
Sorry,
too.
Heather.
A lot of you. Oh no, you guys are fine. And I kind of had a feeling it would go that way because I know how much you each mean to each other. But if you do need to talk with another adoptive parent, you know, if it kind of goes beyond hearing adoption stories on a webinar, that you all already usually have access, especially if you've already applied or you're pre-approved or you came into Lifetime's program, that you get access to a list of families who are happy, just like Heather and Beth are tonight. But especially after hearing these stories, if they can be a resource to you, please reach out to me or your coordinator and let them know, and we'll help you connect for further support and resources. So we hope you all have a great night. And we moved this webinar up a little early because we know that Thanksgiving week gets a little hectic. So Kim and I both want to wish you all a very happy, healthy, and loving Thanksgiving as you celebrate together. And just remember to keep in touch and to know that we are here and happy to help, whether we're just a stepping stone in your journey or we help drive the path all the way to your baby. We're just so honored that all of you have just trusted us, even with an hour tonight, to help you along this path. So we hope that you will stay tuned for future webinars, and we'll talk with you again soon. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Libby.
Bye.
Have a good night, everyone.